You know, for centuries, there's been this shadow hanging over the heart of the Catholic Church. A rumor, really, of the ultimate deception. We're talking about the legend of a female pope, hidden in plain sight. So today, let's do a little investigating. Let's see if these whispers hold any water.
I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a thriller novel, right? Could a woman have actually ruled the church, disguised as a man? That's the big question. So we're going to put on our historical detective hats, sift through clues in ancient stone and old parchments, and see if we can solve this thing.
So where do we even start? Well, every great mystery has a story at its core, and this one revolves around a figure known as Pope John Anglicus. Now, is that a name from the history books or from a work of fiction? Let's find out.
Okay, so the legend goes something like this. You've got this brilliant English woman, Joan. She's desperate for knowledge, but it's an era where that's just not an option for women. So what does she do? She disguises herself as a man. And she's not just smart, she's a genius. She rises through the church ranks so fast that she actually gets elected pope in the 9th century. She rules for over 2 years, and then the unthinkable happens. Right in the middle of a public procession, she goes into labor and gives birth. Talk about a dramatic reveal. Her secret is out?
Wow, what a story, right? But here's the million-dollar question. Is it fact, or is it just great folklore? To figure that out, we have to push past the tale itself. We need to be good detectives here and hunt for some cold, hard evidence, clues that have actually survived all this time. And that brings us to our first stop, the actual architecture of Rome. See, the people who believe this story, they say the proof isn't tucked away in some dusty old book. Nope. They say it's carved right into the city's stones, for anyone to see. So, our investigation kicks off on this little narrow street, right near the Vatican. And our first clue isn't something you see with your eyes, it's something you hear in the name of the street itself. The street is called Via della Papessa. In English, that's Street of the Female Pope. I mean, come on. The legend says this is the exact spot where she gave birth during that procession. So the name itself feels like this permanent little memorial, doesn't it? It's pretty compelling. But when historians actually dig into the city records, a totally different story pops up. The name most likely comes from a noble family, the papacy, who lived right there. The whole connection to Pope Joan, that seems to have been tacked on way later, once her story got really popular. So our first clue kind of falls apart when you look at it closely.
Okay, so let's move on to our next piece of evidence. And for this one, we're heading right inside St. Peter's Basilica to look at one of the most famous works of art on the planet.
We're talking about Bernini's Baldacchino. You know, that gigantic bronze canopy over the main altar? If you go up to the marble pedestals that hold it up, you'll see a series of coats of arms. And if you look really closely at them, there's a woman's face that seems to change from one panel to the next. Her expression gets more and more twisted, like she's in agony. Believers say, aha, this is it. It's a secret coded message showing Pope Joan giving birth.
But again, once we dig into the history, it's not quite so simple. That coat of arms, it belongs to Pope Urban VIII from the Barberini family. He's the one who paid for the whole thing. And it turns out that image of a woman in labor was actually a pretty common symbol back then. It was an allegory representing things like the pains of creation or the hard work of the church. It's a powerful symbol for sure, but it's a general one. It's not a secret diary entry.
All right, so the physical evidence, the stuff carved in stone, it's looking pretty shaky. But what about the paper trail? I mean, surely an event this huge, a female pope getting exposed, someone would have written it down at the time, right? Let's check the historical record.
And this is where we hit a major roadblock. The legend says Pope Joan was around in the 9th century, okay? But when you look at all the papal lists, all the chronicles from that exact time, there are no gaps. There is zero mention of a Pope John Anglicus, nada. Even weirder, the first time anyone even writes her story down is in the 13th century. That's a full 400 years after she supposedly lived. That time gap, honestly, that's probably the most critical piece of this whole puzzle. So let's lay everything out on a timeline. The stones, the stories, let's just see how it all lines up. And when you do that, it's really revealing. So, 9th century, that's when Pope Joan supposedly reigned. Fast forward to the 13th century, that's when her story first appears in writing. And the Baldacchino, that big architectural clue, that wasn't even built until the 17th century. It's not even close.
So this timeline makes one thing crystal clear. Those architectural clues, there's no way they could be a memory of something that happened in the 9th century. They were built centuries later, at a time when the legend of Pope Joan was already a super popular story that everyone was telling.
All right, so we've looked at the stones, we've looked at the scripts. What's the final verdict here? What's the takeaway from our little investigation? Let's just recap real quick. The Street of the Female Pope, named after a local family. The faces on the baldacchino, it's an allegorical symbol on a family's coat of arms. The written stories, they show up 400 years too late. Every single piece of proof, when you really look at it, just doesn't hold up as a historical fact.
And this, I think, is the real takeaway. The clues we've been looking at, they're not evidence of a female pope. They're evidence of just how powerful and popular her story became. The architecture isn't a history book. It's more like a mirror, reflecting a legend that people were already fascinated with.
Which really leaves us with the most interesting question, doesn't it? If there's no real proof, why has this story stuck around for almost 1,000 years? What is it about the idea of a female pope that fascinates us so much? What does it say about power, about faith, and about the kinds of stories we want to believe? And maybe that's the real mystery here.